Hi, so we're going to deploy an Azure VM from an Azure Resource Manager template. So let's see how to do that. So we're back on the Azure portal and we currently have our virtual machine and we can see it's currently running with the Linux operating system. So what we're going to do next is to create the template from this virtual machine so that we can redeploy a new virtual machine and also other resources. First of all, we need to get into the virtual machine and now we can see the options. We'll scroll down and here we have export template. So we're going to click on that, and currently we have the JSON file, which is a Azure Resource Manager's method of storing the properties and variables of the resources. And we need to save this script. That's to add it to the library for the virtual machine. So we're going to click add to library, and once we do that, we're going to save it as a template. So we'll click template lab 11 and just copy that, and we'll use the same for description and save. So we've saved the virtual machine template and we need to go to templates. So you see templates, and now we can see the template we just created. That is the template VM lab 11. So we can use this template to create another virtual machine instance, and it's going to depend on other resources that would enable it to function. For example, it will need the network card, it will need the public IP address, it will need the network security group, and also it will need the resource group. So to do all that, we need to then make sure we export the template for the resource group, which contains all the resources. So we would go back to the resource groups, and now we can see resource group for lab 11, and we can see all the resources that our virtual machine lab 11 is dependent upon. And we can see the network interface card, the network security group, the public IP address, the disk, and we can also see the virtual network. So we're going to scroll down and we also need to export the template. And this is the JSON script, which we will look at later. So we would come here and click add to library, and then we would now type the template name. So we'll say template, and this time is a template for the resource group lab 11, and I'll copy that for the description and save. And if we go back to templates here, templates, we can see now our two new templates we created, that for the resource group, and the second one is for the virtual machine. So now we need to create the new resource group with all the resources, including the virtual machine, using this template. That's the template for the resource group. So how do we do that? So to do that, we need to click on it, and we have two options here. Apart from delete, we have deploy and edit. So why do we need to edit? We need to edit because we are creating a new instance of resources. Hence, they need to be different from the one we already have, which is this templates that we made. So this template is a copy of the original, which still exists in our account, and we need to ensure that there is no clash or there is no interference. So we need to make sure that all the values are changed for our new instance of virtual machines and other resources. So we'll click edit, and now we have the ARM template, that's the Azure Resource Manager, and we'll click on it. And now we expect to see the JSON script, which contains all the information about our resources. For example, we can see the parameter listing our various resources like the virtual machine, we have network interface, and we have the public IP address, we have the virtual network, and the network security groups. And if you come down, we can see it gives the properties of each of those resources. For example, this is for the network security groups. And if we scroll down, the next we have is for the public IP address. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we change our values. To do that, we're going to open up find and replace. That's Control H if you are using the Windows system, and we'll go to find and replace, and we'll make sure that we click on this which says use regular expressions, so that it gets let me show you an example. Like if you put lab 11, you can see it highlights every instance where lab 11 is used. So we're going to change all the lab 11 to lab 12, which is going to form our new resource group, virtual machines and other resources. So we now have 32 instances of where lab 11 is used. So we're going to click on this which says replace all. So once we click on that, we can now see that the lab 12 has been changed, 11 has been changed throughout to lab 12, as we can see here. So that means we have prepared it now for use for the new deployment in resource group 12. Now, there are some common errors, and I listed some of them here. There are generally 3 of them when deploying the virtual machine. So I'm not going to apply these changes now. I'm going to just save our template and deploy, and we'll see that the virtual machine will create an error while other resources will be created, so that we can go back and create only the virtual machine having made these changes. So we'll save this and by clicking OK and save. And now we've saved the template, so we're going to use our template to deploy the new resource group with the resources. So we'll go to templates, and we can still see that the resource group still exists. So that's the resource group template. So we'll click on it again, and this time we'll say deploy. And now it's asking for the resource group. So remember, we are the initial resource group is 11, where these templates were created from. So I'm going to create a new one, and I'll call it resource group lab 12. So that is our new resource group. Locations is fine, and now we can see, because we made the editing on templates. So if you see all this, we made the changes initially, so that's why we now have lab 12 showing up all over here. So we'll click agree and purchase. So now it's going to create our resource group lab 12, and also all the resources that are going to be within the resource group. So we can see deployment in progress, so we can click on the notification icon and click on that to see the progress. And now it has created all these resources, And remember, I said we hope to have an error on the virtual machine because of the common errors. So what that means is that all resources will be created apart from the virtual machine. So we'll go back and create the virtual machine with the template which we got from the virtual machine. That's for lab 11. So let's wait till we see the error. And now we can see deployment failed. Click here for details. So we're going to click, and it says parameter OS disk manage disk ID is not allowed, and we can see the VM lab 12 didn't create. So it means that there is a restriction on this ID variable. So this is the first thing we are going to do, is to delete that line of code. Then we are also going to revisit that of the request guest provision signal, and this last one we are going to set a password for our admin username. So it means we're going to look for manage disk, which is under OS disk and has an ID. So I'll just copy that and I'll close this error. And we need to go back to let's just see the resource group that has been created, lab 12. Click on it, and we can see it has all the other resources: the virtual network, public IP address, the network security group, and the network interface, but it doesn't have the virtual machine. So let's go to templates. We're going to also change this now, so we'll click on it and we'll go to edit so that we can change the content and also remove the errors. So we're going to click again on template, and now we can see the JSON script. So the first thing we need to do, like we did previously, is to change lab 11 to lab 12. So I will hit Control H, and I'm going to look for lab 11, and you make sure that we have this use regular expression highlighted, and then we'll change it to lab 12. So we have 13 instances, so we'll replace all, and now our virtual machine JSON script is ready for deployment, as everything is changed to use our resource group lab 12. So let's go back to the errors. The first thing is, let's look for manage disk, where we have manage disk, and remove that line, the parameter line. So we'll go to Control F, which is to find, and we're going to find where we have managed disk, and it's only one instance, and we can see that the managed disk is in the OS disk exactly as we have there, and we also have the ID parameter. So it's the ID parameter that we're going to take off. So you'll be careful to see that we need to start from here, and we are going to also take away the comma because we do not have it ending in comma. But you would also note that we have to leave this closing curly bracket. So we'll just delete that. So we're done. So that's the first error we've removed. Then the next, we're going to look for require guest provision signal, and we're going to remove it because it's causing conflict. And we can see one instance, which is this. So we're going to remove it, and remember the comma because it doesn't end in a comma. So we'll delete that, and that is done. Then the next is we're going to now create a password for the admin username. So we're going to search for the admin username. So we'll put it there, and let's find the admin username, and we have one instance which is here. So it means right under it we are meant to put the admin password, which is what we have here. So it will take this format, admin password and the password. So copy that, and I'm going to paste that. So once I've done those 3 changes, it means that we've eradicated the error on the virtual machine deployment. So we're going to click OK, and it's validating, and now we'll click save. So now we've changed our template and it's ready to be deployed. So I'm going to click on it again, and this time deploy. And remember, we changed the values so that it will be deployed within the resource group 12 and use the resources there. So we're going to select resource group lab 12, and we can see because we changed the values initially, is already showing virtual machine lab 12, and you can see the disk is going to use is what we changed it to, resource group lab 12 from the JSON script and virtual machine lab 12. And also we check here resource group lab 12 and VM lab 1222. So that's fine. So we'll say I agree and purchase. So we hope it would create the virtual machine and deploy it in resource group lab 12. So let me click on notification, deployment process, and let's see. Hopefully we won't have any errors again, and then we can SSH to confirm our deployment. So we'll give it some time to create the virtual machine. And now our virtual machine has been created, so we go to resource group and we look for the virtual machine. So let's go to virtual machines, and we can see the virtual machine created here, virtual machine lab 12, resource group lab 12, and it's running. So let's go in to virtual machine lab 12, and we can see the public IP. So let's connect through SSH. But before we do that, let's make sure that the networking settings we deployed in the parent virtual machine, where the template was made from, is still in play, and we can see it's still there. Allow the SSH and HTTP. So it will go back to the virtual machine, and let's go to connect through SSH, and I'll just copy that, open this, and we're going to SSH through bash. So I'm going to paste that, then remove this since we're using the username and password, enter, and I'll say yes, and we'll give the password which we used. And now we can see that we are connected to the virtual machine. We are now root user. So we've been able to successfully create the template, that's the Azure Resource Manager template, from the virtual machine which we initially deployed, that's virtual machine lab 11, and we used the templates to redeploy a new virtual machine after we made our changes, and also we redeployed a new resource group with all the resources for the virtual machine. So this time we're also going to see another way to deploy templates, and that is, if we go there, we'll click on instead of clicking on templates, we'll click on deploy a custom template. And now we can see it says build your own template in the editor, create a Linux virtual machine and a Windows virtual machine. But I'm going to come down to where we have template source, and it says quick start template, and is able to source from repositories such as GitHub, so that you can easily deploy templates. We scroll down the rest, so there are lots of them from the repositories, and We can even see WordPress and the rest. So you can also take this route to use the templates to create your resources.